Is there going to be an event that actually forces the issue? Because at the moment, international creditors and Greece are absolutely making no leeway whatsoever.
Yes, I think there are some payment dates which are going to force the issue. We've heard about the two payments to the IMF on the 1st of May and on the 12th of May, which total almost €1 billion. You also have payments to pensions and salaries in the start of May of €1.5 billion. So by that point, Greece is really running very short on cash. And the point is, it will have to make a choice between paying the IMF or paying its pensions and wages. And it got elected on a mandate to say it will always favour its own people. So I think that choice is really going to be a crux of the issue.
So I have read countless articles over the last few days talking about the idea that a default does not mean an exit. Is that the correct way of looking at it?
It depends who they default on, I think, is really the question. So if they don't pay the IMF, for example, on the 12th of May, I think they do have some leeway to stay within the euro and manage the situation. What would happen would be that they would have a month until the managing director of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, notifies the IMF board and officially accounts for a missing payment from Greece. At that point, the Eurozone countries would have to decide whether they consider their loans to also be in default because they have not paid the IMF. But that is a political decision. And I think it's very likely in that situation that the Eurozone countries would say, well, we'll give you a little bit more time. And bear in mind, if the month has passed, they may have been able to get the funds together during that period. So I think an economic...
I mean, they will give them a bit more time as long as Greece is making a little bit of steps in the right direction, which so far they haven't done. Am I reading this correctly?
No, that's true. They would have to force the reforms. They would have to step up. And we have heard some positive comments over the weekend. But ultimately, I think if Greece gets to the stage where it misses a payment to the IMF, they will have very little choice but to move a bit closer to the Eurozone countries. I mean, let's not forget the type of countries that have missed payments to the IMF recently are Somalia, Sudan, Zimbabwe. I don't think that's a group that Greece wants to be part of.
That's a list you want to be on. Stay with us, Raoul. We need to talk about Finland, so let's do that now. Let's go to the country where the country's centre party has secured victory in the national elections. The centre's leader, the self-made millionaire, Juha Sipilä, has promised to lead the country out of recession. Let's get a little bit more. Kati Pohjanpalo is Bloomberg's bureau chief in Helsinki. Kati, tell us more about this win and how it was achieved.
The Centre Party had a landslide victory compared to its 2011 results. And this puts Finland on track for a power shift. The Centre really spent the last 4 years in opposition, along with the Finns party, and that party came second now. So together, these two parties look like a likely candidate to start talks to form a new government.
So, Kati, what kinds of challenges does the country now face?
Well, Finland was known during the Euro crisis as one of the better countries in the Euro, but many of the internal challenges were being masked by how others looked worse. So Finland's basically failed to recover from several hits its economy took during the financial crisis, the Euro area crisis, and now it's suffering from a drop in exports to Russia. There's a couple of very major industries that have just completely vanished. Consumer electronics that was driven by Nokia, and a lot of the paper output that's succumbed to the, electronic online news, iPads and that sort of thing. And this all has hurt public finances really badly. Budgets are in the red since 2008. Government debt has doubled since that year. The growth pace of debt is alarming, even though the level still remains low. And what makes it all worse is Finland's population is aging at the fastest pace in Europe. And that's shrinking the workforce already now. So the economic prospects are rather dim. The central bank forecasts about 1% growth a year in the long term. So the new government really has two things it has to do. It needs to find a way to balance the budget while not killing growth and finding ways to actually boost growth and try and get it onto a faster track.
All right, Kati, thanks so much for the update. Kati Pohjanpalo there in Helsinki.
Right, let's get back to these political developments from a different point of view. We're back with the head of economic research at think tank Open Europe, Raoul Ruparel, still with us. Finland's always been an interesting story, particularly when you put it in the context of the wider European story. We've just been talking about Greece. You've got Greece at one end of the spectrum and Finland almost at the other. The Finns were demanding all kinds of things last time round, and at one point they were the real standout story for resisting help for southern Europe. Does this election change anything in terms of Finland's place in Europe?
Well, I think it's becoming clearer from the debate around the election just how poor the Finnish economy has been doing. And as the report said there, it has been masked because of the crisis. But if you look at the forecast going forward, Finland is very low down on the list of Eurozone countries. I think in terms of the approach to the Eurozone crisis in Greece, I mean, as you noted, it's always been a very hawkish country, no matter who's in government. But the real question now is what the coalition will be. And if the Finns are in that coalition, can you have a coalition that votes to approve a future package for Greece? I mean, there will need to be some kind of funding for Greece after June when the bailout ends, and I think the Finns would never vote for that. So we could see any new coalition with them involved coming under significant strain.
Raoul, what do you make of the new person in charge? He was saying that there are no magic tricks. It's a 10-year project to fix the economy. Do they have 10 years? I mean, 10 years is a long way off.
Well, it's true. I mean, I think their problems are very structural. They're very deep-rooted. As we heard there, they have long-term demographic problems, which may mean they have to open up more widely to immigration, something Finland has never been particularly keen on or not done particularly well on. They've always ranked high on these competitiveness indicators, so people question why they're doing so badly. And I think we heard there just fundamentally the structure of their economy, digital, forestry, metals related to shipbuilding, all of those have taken a huge hit in the past few years. And they really have to find a new balance of drivers for growth. So I think it is a long-term project.
Can I just ask a question about Finland and the UK? And Brexit and treaty reform and all these kind of things. How would these two fit together with Finland?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think that naturally they're quite inclined in terms of their economic approach, mostly free trading, in favour of these structural reforms, and normally part of the harder northern bloc. But obviously, whenever a country is going through a tough economic period, focusing internally, it's always hard to ask it to make acquisitions or exceptions for other countries outside. So we could see some hostility there, but it's very hard to say until we know what the coalition looks like.
Fair enough.
Raoul, thank you so much. Raoul Ruparel there, Head of Economic Research at Open Europe.